Definitely, it's such a good thing to have on your CV, and I learned so much from it because you basically just do everything. You research your stories, you go and do your interviews, you film them, you edit them, you upload them. You're just like a self-shooting, self-editing reporter, and I think that allows us to do. I don't know. I feel like I definitely learned more at that stage from Pop-Up Newsroom than I did from any other module.
I like the two events because of the fact that it allowed me to actually do some of the things that we were talking about in class, so to put them in practice rather than just theory.
When I look back, I think it was quite an exciting event because actually I didn't have a working experience before I came Newcastle to study journalism. So actually that was the first time for me to participate in the news making. So it's very exciting and inspiring.
I think pop-up news is a quite interesting experience because I work together with a lot of students from other countries, and we were having a lot of fun and we learned a lot of stuff.
We are reporting for Up Newsroom on women in sports.
And we're here at Beamish Living Museum with Pop-Up News.
Hi everyone, today we are coach lanes.
Hello, we are here working for Pop-Up Newsroom.
I'm here at BBC Newcastle for Pop-Up Newsroom to talk to Helen Goodman, Labour MP for Bishop Auckland and Shadow Minister for Culture, Media and Sport. Today we're going to be talking about
The idea was to try out a new kind of journalism where you're taking away that normal space, the traditional space of the newsroom. And in doing so, you're also taking away some of the conventions of the newsroom. So we're trying to think again of what is a story? What is a news story? What are the news values we're dealing with now? And trying to get much closer to a wider range of people. So it's not those traditional newsroom routines and values, it's a different space people are working in, where they're working with smartphones, with social media, they're working out on the street, and they're finding different kinds of stories because it's a different kind of way of doing journalism.
Pop-Up Newsroom is a temporary virtual newsroom. It springs to life and student journalists cover events or topics for a brief period of time. That might be a few hours or it might be a few days. As soon as the story is covered, then the Pop-Up Newsroom hibernates until the next event. What's important to remember about the Pop-Up Newsroom is there isn't any physical newsroom waiting to welcome the students back. Instead, they go out and collect these stories in the streets, at businesses, at events, whatever, and they process the news using their cell phones or tablets on the go and post their stories as they collect the information. Pop-Up Newsroom serves several purposes. One of the main purposes is to train student journalists how to use mobile media, how to use their cell phone or their tablet to report a story. Secondly, Pop-Up Newsroom is designed to help student journalists understand what the situation might be for a citizen journalist out covering similar stories. What sort of obstacles would they face? How difficult would it be for them to get their stories noticed? And one of the best ways for students to understand that is to basically operate as citizen journalists themselves. So the emphasis is not on big equipment and highly processed stories, but rather using available social media tools, using your own phone if you have one, to go out and collect a story and post it online as quickly as possible.
Pop-Up Newsroom is an opportunity for a large number of, in our case, student reporters to report on a single subject, and that's using a wide range of methods with a really large number of different stories to follow up and and to capture. So it's kind of bringing lots of different perspectives, lots of different stories to bear on a single theme.
Pop-up Newsroom, as we did it, was very much a student exercise, but I think what it's doing is exploring questions which I think may need to be addressed by mainstream journalism in the very near future. The use of social media as part of the job. Some students went to see the Bishop of Jarrow to ask him about women in the church, and he actually said, I think within a year or less we'll have women archbishops in the Church of England. And about 2 weeks ago that became the case. Now at the time he said that, that was worth reporting. So yeah, they're not just students who are doing it as part of a college exercise. They were actually going out and finding stories and reporting on it. Yes, it was very much journalism.
We did have a website, and I'm pretty sure it got some traffic on it, but Twitter, I'm not saying Facebook, I don't think Facebook was updated as much, and I don't think the content that we were creating was actually very suitable for Facebook as it was for Twitter. But Twitter, yeah, and especially the second time around, it kind of like exploded, and I think we got favorited by the UN or something crazy like that. Like no one was expecting it, and a lot of people got involved, and I think we got our content out there through social media. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been possible.
Pop-up Newsroom is an international project, so we have to contact the students from other universities from overseas. Through social media. And second, we have to find the proper person, the contacts, to find the story through social media. Yeah. So, and then we have to report the story through social media. We use Twitter a lot and Facebook, so that we can publicize our story and our ideas on this content.
I think it's integral part of Pop-up Newsroom, because without social media we have very limited means to publish our story and spread it. If you just put your story on blog, then nobody would see it. But using social media, you can share it with your friends, and it can go viral.
Social media is about allowing people to have these conversations with lots of other people at the same time, and to bring other people into the conversations and share them. So it's not an old-fashioned way of doing journalism where it goes out on a TV show, TV news program, you listen to it, or you listen to it on the net, and you just sit and listen to it, and maybe think about it. You might tell other people about it. This social media was at the heart of a Pop-up Newsroom, because it's about shaping that building that network and expanding that network.
Without mobile technology, without social media, you cannot really imagine Pop-up Newsroom working at all. It is rather, it is an idea whose time has come. The Pop-up Newsroom had to happen now, and it can't have happened before simply because we did not have the tools to make it happen. So it is mobile technology and social media that have made it possible for us to create something like the Pop-up Newsroom. It is just an answer to the kind of technological developments that have happened in the world of media today.
Yes, social media has enabled everyone to be a publisher, but at the same time, that's put a huge strain on professional and traditional journalists in terms of verifying material that's out there and putting it in a shape that people can absorb and understand, essentially. But I think there's a danger with all social media that you can lose sight of the fact that, as I think it was Tom Gloser, who was head of Reuters, said, the world will always need editing. The role of journalism these days, professional journalism, is to take this raw material and shape it into something meaningful, but also something accurate.
If a person using social media is aware of the dangers, the loopholes, the discrepancies, then he can use it to his benefit. So in the end, I think social media on its own is not a bad thing.
I think those boundaries between the citizen and the journalist are now becoming much more fluid. Lots of people are doing acts of journalism. Journalism is part of our life as citizens. So yes, Pop-Up Newsroom is a new way of engaging wider citizens and working with them. So it's not journalists telling stories to the rest of the citizenry of the country. It's journalists and citizens working together to find out what's happening in the society around us and to understand it better.
Pop-Up is a blend of citizen journalism and professional journalism. And if I'm honest, I think that's the right environment for citizen journalism. I think, I'm a fan of citizen journalism. I think it's a really important development in journalism over the last 10 years. But I still think it needs professionals sitting around it to help shape it, to help check it, to help give it trustworthiness, make it reliable. It's got to be something that readers, can depend on, and I think professionals are in the right position to help that.
I think citizen journalism in the future will be, and probably already is to a degree, a huge source of new stories to mainstream media. If people feel they have something they want to say or something they want to tell, social media allows them to do that. I have to say, I'm probably, in terms of professional journalists, I'm probably in something of a minority. Probably more professional journalists think that citizen journalists are time-wasting amateurs who just get in the way of doing the job. But I think they're an indication of how the job's in the process of changing. And I think that professional journalists who deny that are in denial about the nature of the way the profession's changing.
More often than not, we have seen from a previous experience, from past experience, that some of the most reliable footage comes from citizen journalists simply because they do not have a hidden agenda. They do not have any other motive other than to deliver news. Of course, there might be unpleasant elements. There might be people with an ulterior motive who try to distort news. But that's where the role of a journalist evolves. Earlier on, he often was just reporting back what he'd heard. But now he has a slightly more important job. He becomes a curator of news. So he helps filter that information and separate the wheat from the chaff. So in that sense, I think while the scope of journalism, while the scope of news gathering has expanded exponentially, the role of a journalist has also become far more sophisticated. And there are platforms which help us separate the truth, the fact from the fiction and so on. And there are social media verification agencies. So as with any other medium, you would have to verify the news. And I don't see how citizen journalism makes news less verifiable. It's the bad journalists that do not follow due diligence that actually end up disseminating wrong information, or sometimes it is done inadvertently, in which case there is just as simple a method to come out and correct that information.
Another great thing about Pop-Up Newsroom is that it has that international perspective, covering a broad theme. So it gives you a large scope of important issues from around the world, so that you're not limiting yourself to just looking at what's around you, what's in your area. You're looking at the greater picture and what's going on in the entirety of the world. And I think that that's a key thing for Pop-Up Newsroom. It's a key thing for news. It's a key thing for people in general to do, to look at international perspectives and understand them.
Students from America, India, and from Newcastle, we all worked so hard so that we managed to put our hashtag in Twitter trend. And in order to do that, we have to have a lot of retweet or mention of that particular phrase, in this case, a hashtag.
When all those tweets are going out there on those hashtags, people around the world were picking them up. And that's it's kind of networked form of journalism. So the journalists, you, the students here, the students in California, the students in India, are doing something really interesting. They're starting that conversation, they're hosting that conversation. More and more people are joining in that. So people are exploring what you're doing. You've started that work, you've started that discussion. You here, students in India, students in California, on that first one on austerity and poverty, had done a lot of research beforehand and looked at what that means in different countries. It means something different in America to here to India, and in that first instance to Taiwan as well. And I think people in India were looking at what people think about what poverty was here. So it's a way of journalists, you, researching, engaging with important issues, and then starting those conversations. And on that one with the austerity and poverty, just one of the hashtags, people using lots of hashtags, just one of the main one, which has hashtag life poverty, that got over 1/3 impressions around the world in 48 hours. So it wasn't just you doing it, it was an amazing network you built. Lots of people were looking at that. And the second one, on International Women's Day, that got over 500,000 impressions. So and that was one hashtag out of several. So the whole project would have brought in a network of several million people, I should think, into that one conversation in one place. Different kind of way of relating to an audience. It's a different kind of way of thinking about the people who are using your journalism as not simply an audience, but they are people picking up what you're doing, passing it on, adding to it, adding their own content.
Reporting for Pop-Up Newsroom helps students learn two complementary sets of skills. One of these is to produce journalism independently and to actually distribute their own stories on the scene. The second skill set is to work collaboratively, so that while they're producing all this content on their own, they're also working with a group of other students producing stories on the same topic. In some cases, this collaboration is occurring internationally, so they're producing stories with students who aren't even in the same country as they are. This is really important because these sorts of collaborations and this ability to work independently are the future of journalism.
The first topic we chose, which was austerity, was a good topic, but I think it was quite a difficult one. It was maybe a little bit too abstract for some of our students. So maybe, I think the International Women's Day one was easier for people to understand and to think about stories for. So I suspect maybe next year we'll try and be a little bit more careful with the actual themes we choose. So I think it is an experiment, it's evolving. I think we're talking about perhaps doing, whereas last time we worked with international partners, we're thinking maybe next time we might work with other UK universities. So maybe concentrate on an issue or a topic that is particularly prevalent or of interest to the UK, and then maybe get other journalism schools in the UK to help us with the reporting of that.
The potential of the pop-up newsroom is pretty much limitless, and with the impetus that technology is providing, I think it's it will become very hard to ignore the process of the pop-up newsroom, and sooner rather than later, even mainstream news media organizations will be using the pop-up newsroom in some form or the other.
It's going to be part of our program from now on, but whether it'll stay the same or not, I don't know. I think the world is changing all the time. So in 3 or 4 years, we might be doing it in a different way. We might be using different social media. We might be, I don't know what we're doing because the world's changing so quickly.